Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Just sit tight. We're going to get started here real soon. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started here at 7:02. I'll just give another minute here for people to get in, and we'll get started. Just give it about another 30 seconds or so in here, and we'll get started. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Kyle Hoffman from the USTA Mid-Atlantic. Personally want to welcome everybody tonight for night number 2 for the 2021 virtual showcase or virtual conference presented by the USTA Mid-Atlantic. We're excited to have you back tonight. And for those that are joining us for the first time, welcome. The webinar is being recorded and available to refer back to at any time. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function on this webinar, and our staff will answer your question at the end of each segment if there are still questions. If we do run out of time before your question is answered, we will be sharing a transcript of all the written questions to everyone's email after this webinar. Today, we're expecting a pretty large crowd for this, so let's jump right in. Tonight's session will be featuring parent and player information. I'm really excited to introduce Rachel Kros, who's the USTA Mid-Atlantic's Director of Competition and Youth Play. Rachel, we appreciate your time coming on tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kyle. Give me a second here to get everything set up and situated, and we will get started. So thank you, everybody, for joining. I am super excited to have you all here. And I want to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Rachel Kros, as Kyle said. I'm the Director of Competition and Youth Play for the Mid-Atlantic Section. I am first and foremost a tennis mom. I raised 2 boys in the Mid-Atlantic who went on to play collegiate tennis at Virginia Tech. Yes, go Hokies. I had a life before tennis. I was actually an architect for my career. And then when my kids were heading into high school, it became apparent that tennis was complicated. So I took it upon myself to become a semi-expert in the world of junior tennis. and that led to founding a junior tennis consulting business where I helped other parents navigate the sometimes complex world of junior tennis. And that ultimately led to joining the USTA staff in 2018. A little bit about our department. We are a fairly good-sized department encompassing multiple programs. That includes, but is not limited to, adult tournaments, wheelchair tournaments, the junior player pathway, and all of the products associated with the junior player pathway, which we're going to talk primarily about tonight. As I said, we are an all-encompassing team, and I want to make sure you know the team. Kyle, you met a few minutes ago. We also have Warren, the manager of youth play. Warren is on the call and will be answering questions. We also have Janine, our tournaments coordinator. She will also be on the call behind the scenes answering questions. Lisa could not join us tonight, but many of you know Lisa over the years, and she is a wealth of information. So what are we going to cover tonight? Since we're in the holiday season, let's be honest. They're making lists and checking it twice. Let's have a list of what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to go over general USTA information, review the junior player pathway. We're going to spend a fairly decent chunk of time talking about sportsmanship. And then we're going to end on the top 10 things that everybody needs to know about 2022. So as a reminder to all of you out there, the Mid-Atlantic section is one of 17 sections of the USTA. It includes Virginia, Maryland, DC, and approximately half of West Virginia. As we are one of 17 sections, some of the issues that you may run into over the years, including questions about membership, challenges with logging into your USTA account, or any technical issues you may have in terms of registering for USTA programs, I want to make sure that everybody knows that those are best handled at the national level through the National Customer Care System. In addition to this email that I'm showing, there is also a 1-800 number and a live chat and a text feature as well for customer care. I'm going to cover a fair amount of information tonight, so I want to make sure that everybody knows where to get their questions answered when things come up. In the youth play space, we have two pretty important resource pages that everybody should bookmark. The Mid-Atlantic Junior Resources page is primarily focused on the tournament space. And then we also have a youth play landing page that focuses on everything in the youth play space. Additionally, we have some dedicated emails to facilitate customer service. If after this presentation or months from now you have questions and want to know where to follow up, if your questions are related to tournaments, simple email, tournaments@mas.usta.com. That is all questions related to adult, youth, or wheelchair tournaments. If you have any questions about the youth play space, email youthplay@mas.usta.com. That covers all programs in the youth play space, including junior team tennis, junior circuit events, and 10 and under. And new this year, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later in the program, will be sportsmanship@mas.usta.com. With that, let's get started. 2021 marked a monumental year for USTA. January 1st of 2021, the 2021 National Unification launched. That unification was born out of years and years of research, years and years of testing, and years of endless meetings. I was in a lot of those meetings, and it was an interesting challenge to get all 17 sections to agree to unification. Unification applies to, again, adult, youth, and wheelchair space. The great thing about unification, it is vastly simpler for our customer and our providers. It is one national system, and it is one national system that is the same and allows flexibility. Players can play across section lines. Rankings are all calculated the same. A 10 and under kid who wants to go down and play in North Carolina can go play in North Carolina. So it is a huge improvement. So let's go over a little bit of what the general play space is about. Tonight, when we're talking, I want to frame everything in the context of player development, whether it's the unranked space, the ranked space, or frankly, practices at your training sessions. everything is ultimately about player development. In the non-ranked player development space, we have a couple of different products. We have the Team Challenge, which is basically a low pressure introduction to competition. It does not emphasize results. It's basically an opportunity for kids to get out and play points and play matches in a low pressure environment. Then we have the junior circuit. We're going to talk quite a bit about the junior circuit later on, but the junior circuit is a non-elimination format emphasizing results and ratings, but again, it's not ranked. Important to note, all of these products are open to players 5 through 18 and inclusive of all ball colors. We also have in the junior play space, team play. Team play takes a couple of different forms. It includes team events on the weekends, as well as local team league play, which is committing to a season of play counting towards league standings. Both of them are great opportunities for team play and match play, and therefore player development. Talk a little bit about 10 and under player development. It is important to note that player development in this space is primarily geared towards the age of the player. It's generally recommended that a player 5 to 7 years old plays red ball. 7 to 9-year-olds are generally in orange ball. 9 to 10-year-olds are generally in green ball. We have a hard and fast line that players must meet to move into the yellow ball space. For those of you who don't know, red, orange, and green are different compression balls that change the pace of the game and therefore promote player development. Yellow ball is going to move the fastest, and that's why it's geared towards our older players. So in order to compete in a yellow ball event, players must have cleared the play tracker, which I'll talk about in a minute, or be 11 years old to play in yellow ball programming. So what is the Net Generation Play Tracker? It's a fun, interactive points tracker within your player's profile that shows wins and progress and participation points as they move through the developmental phase. Very important to understand, everything we do in the 2021 Unification is tied to the American Development Model. That includes the 10 and under space, it includes the non-ranked play space, and it ultimately includes tournaments. If you're not familiar with the American Development Model, I encourage you to check it out. So let's go on to tournaments. These are the ranked play opportunities. There are 7 levels of tournaments across the country. Level 7 is a one-day, low-level intermediate, short format event. Moving into 4s and 5s, these are 2, 3, 4-day events, all the way up to national championships at level 1, which are sometimes week-plus long events. Also at the very top of the pyramid, we have the international events, the ITF events, Eddie Herr, Orange Bowl, etc. So let's talk about the differences between these products and how they fit in to the player development model. Level 6 and level 7 are match play opportunities. The purpose of these events is to expose a player to multiple opponents in short format in a relatively short period of time. So for instance, in our section, a level 7, a player is going to play either a round robin or what we call a compass draw, and they're going to play between 2 and 4 matches. Each match is a single set to 6, and they're going to rapidly turn over and play another match. Players benefit from that opportunity in those early tournament experiences of meeting multiple opponents at the same event. It is, again, all part of player development. Level 6 is a slight bump up from level 7. It is 2 short sets to 4, but again, you're playing round robin or compass, and the player can expect to play between 2 and 4 matches in a given event. Now, once you transition into the level 5s and level 4s, those are section level events that look more like traditional draws that you're all familiar with, you know, a US Open draw where you have seeds and players advance through the draw. We as a section play all of our events as feed-in constellations. That means as Players progress in the main draw, they keep winning, they keep moving. If they lose, they're going to be fed into the consolation. A player is not eliminated from the draw until they've lost twice. There are a couple exceptions to that, but that's generally how we operate. Levels 7, 6, 5, and 4 are all governed by the section. We determine the schedule. We work with the facilities to run those events. The level 3 space, that's where it gets a little complicated. We offer both level 3 closed, which means closed to Mid-Atlantic players. Those we schedule and run. And we offer open level 3s. Open level 3s are run at the national level, set by the national schedule and awarded by the national staff. Then everything above a level 3, 2s and 1s, are set by the national staff. So a little bit about tournaments. What is the purpose of playing tournaments? Well, most people will tell you it's about getting a ranking. Getting a ranking is part of it. Players earn ranking points by wins in ranked tournaments, okay? Their ranking is made up of the best 6 and 15% of the best 6 doubles. So 6 singles plus 15% of the best 6 doubles determines a player's ranking, okay? The difference in this play space is that level 7, 11, and level 6 are points per win. So again, remember I said everybody plays multiple matches. Each match they win counts towards ranking points, and they get those ranking points. In the level 1 through 4 space, it's actually 1 through 5, sorry, it's a little different. Because those are more traditional draws, points are awarded based on where you finish in the draw. So a winner of a level 3 gets 300 points. They are awarded 300 points for winning that draw. So you might say to yourself, well, what's the difference between playing a level 6 and playing a level 4? The difference is the point value of each of these levels as you move up through the system goes up. So a player who is winning consistently level 5s, therefore has enough of a high ranking to be able to qualify and get into the level 4 and move from there. So with that, I see a question has come in, and I'm going to take a break here, and I believe I'm going to get asked a question. Kyle?
Yes, this one comes from Mike. He's asking, do the various levels match up with the UTR levels?
So currently, the answer to that question is no. However, I am going to talk later in the presentation about the World Tennis number, which is coming into play in 2022. And with that, in 2022, we will be able to pilot and run events based on World Tennis ratings. Any other questions coming in?
I think
So
you're
I
okay.
mentioned on my slide, I'm a dog lover. Forgive me, you can hear my dogs barking in the background.
Yep, I don't see any other questions for the moment, so I think we might be okay to move on.
Awesome. All right, let's talk about sportsmanship. Again, I want to frame everything we're talking about tonight in the context of player development. One of the challenges of an individual sport like tennis is the pressure on the player. The players are out there all alone. They need to make their own calls. Coaching is generally not permitted. And frankly, there's an expectation and a pressure to make the right call. Those pressures are some of the greatest challenges of tennis. In the context of player development, and I say this as a mom who's been through it with kids who weren't always well behaved on the court, it is also the opportunity. Through those experiences, players build resilience and confidence. They learn how to handle difficult situations. They become independent thinkers. And most importantly, they expect the best of themselves. So you're thinking to yourself, okay, so why are we having this conversation about sportsmanship? There are rules. Yes, there are. There are rules of conduct in tennis. These rules are outlined at Friend at Court and in our regulations. They include the code, which is incorporated into Friend at Court. They include the point penalty system, which is in Friend at Court. Important to note, and we'll talk a little bit more about the point penalty system in a minute, that the intention of the point penalty system is to deter unsportsmanlike conduct. It is not to punish. It is intended to help players understand the parameters of proper conduct. We also have the USTA Mid-Atlantic regulations, including our specific sportsmanship expectations. Where our sportsmanship expectations deviate a little bit from the code and the point penalty system is that we do have some very specific language that we enforce in our section. An example of that is that we ask parents, coaches, and spectators to remain 10 feet away from the playing area. We don't want parents and coaches hanging on the fence because that makes some players uncomfortable. We have a couple of other examples in our regulations that are specific to the Mid-Atlantic, but that's not really what we're here to talk about. Unfortunately, what we're here to talk about is that despite the rules and despite the fact that the majority of parents and players are absolutely doing the right thing, we are still seeing an uptick in issues, particularly with spectators' behavior on site. We are seeing an increased number of incidents where there are inappropriate and disparaging comments made about minor children. We've also seen some unfortunate incidents of racially charged interactions that are just not going to be tolerated. And unfortunately, these areas of concern are spreading beyond the event. We're hearing about incidents and altercations at practices and online. All of these unfortunate trends are complicated by the fact that we also have fewer officials. So despite, again, the fact that I want to reiterate that most of our parents and players are doing it right, we still have some challenges. So what do? Because sports is supposed to be fun. This is supposed to be a safe place for all of our players. So what are we going to do about it? I would like to challenge all of you and the community at large in the Mid-Atlantic to change the framework around sportsmanship. I want everybody to kind of take a step back and recognize the important role that the opponent plays on the other side of the net. What I have up on the screen is a quote from Megan Moulton-Levy. For those of you who don't know her, she was a top 50 WTA doubles player, highly decorated collegiate player. She currently serves on the USTA Board of Directors, and she's the Director of Player Development at JTCC. She was a two-time recipient of the incredibly prestigious National ITA Arthur Ashe Jr. Award. And this snippet that I have up on the screen was from an interview that she did a few weeks back on the USTA conference. And it really captured my attention because she's making the very important point that she didn't look at the opponent on the other side of the net as her enemy. She was like, hey, we're doing this together. Thank you for showing up so that I can practice what I want to practice. And so as we head into this larger conversation about sportsmanship, I want everybody to consider that perspective. So that brings us to kind of how we would like to move forward. We are launching a 2022 USTA Mid-Atlantic Sportsmanship program. This program has 3 essential components. Commit. We are going to ask every player, parent, spectator, coach, provider to commit to the Mid-Atlantic Pledge. This will be launching in 2022. We're also going to celebrate. We're going to recognize and honor those that demonstrate good sportsmanship. This is a program that launched in 21 and we're expanding in 22. Again, we want to change the dialogue. I want to hear about the hundreds of good things that are happening out there to balance out the challenges we're having. Now, unfortunately, to make any good sportsmanship program work, you also have to have consequences. We are going to provide and execute transparent, and transparent is very important here, and consistent consequences for inappropriate behavior. That will be launching also in 2022. So I mentioned the Mid-Atlantic Pledge. Let's talk about it. Here on the screen is the pledge that we intend to launch in 2022. All of you will be asked to sign it via digital signature. I just want to read it here for a moment and let everybody soak it in. As a participant in USTA Mid-Atlantic programs, whether as a player, parent, spectator, or provider, I commit to a fun, fair, safe, and inclusive environment for all. I pledge to always champion exceptional sportsmanship on and off the court. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and we hope will have a significant impact. As a part of the Mid-Atlantic Pledge, you're also going to see a published list of do's and don'ts, examples of how to behave at a tennis tournament. The reality is that all of this information that I'm showing on the screen is actually available in the code and in Friend at Court. But let's be honest, nobody's reading it. So we want to put it out there in a manner that allows everybody to absorb it. So what does that mean? You're going to see this at tournaments. You're going to see this displayed at training facilities. You're going to see it attached to emails. We want it to become clear and transparent and understood how everybody is expected to behave at an event. It's pretty simple examples, and many of you already know and understand this. You know, you say nice point. You say thank you. You respect the call. But I want to draw some attention to some of the examples on the don't list, because I think this becomes a little hard, especially for those who might be new to the sport, to know where that line of crossing over happens. I'm going to use a pretty specific example here. Unfortunately, we had quite a few instances this year of either a player or a person associated with a player accusing another player of cheating and going around and saying this player's a cheater. That's not acceptable behavior. And I want everybody to think about how they would feel if that was in reverse and it was their child who was being labeled, maybe for something they legitimately did wrong, but maybe not. So we wanted to present very clear examples of do's and don'ts that help navigate and help people understand proper behavior. You will notice that it is divided up into players and spectators, and that will be true throughout everything you see, that we're offering examples in both of those spaces. I see a question has come in, but I'm going to wait until I'm all the way through this sportsmanship section before we answer it. I want to recognize celebrating. As I said, we want to focus on the things that are going well. This is a program that we launched in 2021. It is an honor roll. It is a simple application. It takes less than 5 minutes for somebody to submit somebody for nomination. Important to recognize that it is for juniors and adults, and it recognizes both sportsmanship and community service. Also important to note, USTA membership is not required for either the reporter or the person being nominated. Multiple nominations are recommended and encouraged. You would make my day if you filled our inbox with nominations. Those repeat nominations will be eligible for expanded recognition in our program in 2022. We are working on the next phase of this program. Also really important to note is that nominations can come from anywhere. It can be a high school practice or a high school match. It can be something that happened at a practice match. It can be at any USTA programming on or off the court. We want to hear from you when somebody does something exemplary and honorable. One of my favorite examples that came in early on in this program was a player who was in a tight tiebreaker and their opponent was serving and their opponent called out the incorrect score, and the player raised his racket and said, no, that's the wrong score, and corrected the score in favor of his opponent. Little acts of sportsmanship need to be recognized and celebrated. So let's talk about consequences. As I said, in order to be able to launch and execute a solid sportsmanship program, we also have to have consequences for those unfortunate times when the lines are crossed. So a little bit about the consequences and what we're calling the Mid-Atlantic Disciplinary Action Plan. This is launching in 2022. As I said, it will be very transparent. There will be a published matrix of examples. If you do this, this is the first thing that happens. If we receive a notification of a second incident, this is what happens. If there's a third action that's going to happen. All of that will be transparent and visible to everybody. And we will release that information and a lot more detail about the program in 2022. The other thing that's important about this program is it's about consistency. It aligns with the point penalty system as outlined in Friend at Court, but it also, by publishing a matrix of action and being very transparent about what we're doing, reassures all of you that we are consistently enforcing the same consequences across the board. Lastly, it's enforceable. It is 100% the expectation that any inappropriate action taken by the players or spectators will be coded under the point penalty system. The majority of those enforcements are going to happen on site at the event. However, we do have things that slip through the cracks, and when that happens, that's where the disciplinary action plan is going to come into play. If an issue is not addressed on site, but it's reported to the section within 48 hours, the staff will implement the disciplinary action plan. And important to note, any complaint that comes in, unless it's egregious, the first and only reaction will be a notification letter. That notification letter is just a warning letter. Nobody needs to panic. Nobody needs to think, oh my goodness, there's penalty points. It's just a warning letter. We are just notifying you that somebody reported inappropriate behavior. We're not saying the report is right. We're not saying you're in trouble. We're just saying, here we are, okay? On that note, if you do receive a notification letter, you're not necessarily going to get a response from us if you write and ask a bunch of questions. So just understand, it's just a notification, it's gone out. The other thing you should know is that in order to track all of the things that come in and actions taken, both parties, the person reporting and the person receiving the notification, will receive an automatic notification. Again, doesn't mean anybody's in trouble, doesn't mean anybody's done anything wrong. It's just our means of tracking that something was reported. So I'm going to get a little serious here and talk about the point penalty system. One of the greatest challenges we have is that a lot of people don't understand that this point penalty system exists in friend of court and should be used and executed. So, for give an example, if you were at a tournament and a player, there happens to be an official observing a match, or a tournament director, important to note, tournament directors can issue codes, observing a match, and they see a player bang their racket on the ground. And that tournament director official says, code violation, point penalty, and awards a point to the opponent. What everybody on this call needs to understand is that 1 point that is taken care of on site translates to 2 points in the suspension system. It is a progressive penalty system. So if they do it once, it's a point penalty. If they do it twice, it's a game. If they do it 3 times in the same event, it's a default, okay? Now, that might sound a little scary to some of you. I am talking to you as a tennis parent whose child has been coded multiple times. It's okay. It's part of the learning process of where the line can be drawn of appropriate behavior. That being said, some of you may be wondering, well, if I just get all these point penalties, what happens if I don't agree with them? When a player reaches the threshold of suspension, which is 10 points under the point penalty system, they can appeal actions. However, there's no appeal process prior to reaching the threshold of suspension, unless action is taken by the grievance committee. The last thing I want to note here is if something really egregious occurs on site, players or parents feel endangered. The tournament director feels that the situation could become volatile. In that instance, the player and or the person associated with the player is going to be asked to leave the site immediately. We have to protect all of our players. That will only happen in very egregious instances. So let's talk about the implementation of the sportsmanship plan. It is a new program. As I said, it is a new way of thinking about sportsmanship. So the most important thing we're going to need to do is educate. We're going to send information. We're going to present FAQs. We're going to send newsletters and update web pages and provide all sorts of resources. Also important to this to understand is that it's going to take the community at large to execute this program. And that includes our responsibility to train our providers and officials to get consistent enforcement. So as an important first step in this program, And recognizing that we do have a shortage of USTA officials, we are requiring all providers in 2022 to complete the dual role training offered by USTA officiating. This short online course bridges the gap between provider and official and will help us work our way towards the consistent enforcement that we all desire. Similarly, we're going to have special sessions early in 2022 to train our providers and officials on the expectations of enforcement. Lastly, anytime you roll out a new program, we have to evaluate. And so as this rolls out, we're going to continually evaluate and revise as needed to ensure a fair, fun, safe, and inclusive environment for all. I want to encourage everybody to help reframe this conversation. Be gracious, be kind. We're all in this together. We want our players to have a positive experience, and we need all of you to be a part of that journey. With that, I'm going to, I think, get some questions. Kyle, what have you got?
One in from the live here at the moment, and then I've got one for you. We'll start with Mike's question. Back to the part regarding the pledge, and I'm going to interpret Mike, and feel free to chime in with a second part to this if I don't get your question fully answered. But regarding the pledge, he's asking, shouldn't the word coach be included in the pledge? He's a high school coach, and he's talking about maybe not all the coaches will see themselves as a provider based on what the pledge is asking.
That is great feedback, and we're happy to incorporate it. We initially did not include it because we were trying to keep it short, and in our mind, all of you that are coaches are providers, but absolutely, that's excellent feedback.
And then I've got one for you as well. And again, if people have questions about the sportsman piece, feel free to put them in the chat. Just can you talk a little bit, Rachel, as to why the need for the sportsmanship piece? I know you touched on it briefly, but just to maybe give us a better sense of thinking behind it.
So unfortunately, when you have one instance of poor sportsmanship, it can ruin and impact the experience for all the players who are having a positive experience and trying to just have fun and be out there and enjoy themselves. And we have seen an unfortunate escalation this year where, for whatever reason, initial enforcements have not happened and the situations have escalated to a point that frankly, we're just not comfortable. It is our job to provide a safe, fun, fair event. And we feel strongly that in order to do that, we need to set some pretty clear parameters around behavior.
And just some follow-up
just
feedback.
Come in.
Yeah. Follow-up feedback from Mike. He just was saying that that did answer his question. It's just saying that's kind of essential change for coaches that may not identify themselves as providers.
Absolutely. Happy to make the change.
Okay.
Anything else we need to do before we move on to the next section?
No, I think we're privately answering everybody else's questions at the moment, and I think we're okay.
Awesome.
All right. We've got about a little over 20 minutes left.
Yep, we're going to move quickly. Okay. So, top 10 things to know for 2022. Here's the list of things I'm going to go through relatively quickly here so that we can make sure to get to more questions at the end. We talked a lot about sportsmanship. I just kind of want to leave us in a happy place and recognize that as a section, we are genuinely considered to have produced some amazing good sports, including Francis, who was recently nominated for the 2021 ATP Award for sportsmanship. Schedule and planning. The majority of questions that I receive from parents is how to plan the schedule, how do I know what to sign up for, etc. Couple important things to note. You're not going to see 2022 events on the USTA site yet. We have to do some changeover behind the scenes in terms of configuration before we can launch 2022. That is in process. So in the meantime, what do? You bookmark our junior resources page, and you will find on that junior resources page a sneak peek calendar for January, February, and March. That sneak peek calendar is broken down into levels 1 through 4 and level 5. We typically do not release a schedule of level 6 and 7 events, as those are quite frequent throughout the year. The full 2022 planning calendar for both levels 1 through 4 and level 5 will be released later this month. Also later this month, we have developed a in-depth frequently asked questions document specific to how we schedule and why. I get a lot of questions on scheduling, and I can just share with you, it is ridiculously complicated. So we've written this FAQ to hopefully answer some of those questions. That being said, I do want to touch on a few questions that I get fairly frequently. I want to explain to everybody that as the Mid-Atlantic section, and quite frankly, most other sections of the USTA, we utilize something called stacking and staggering when outlining our schedule. Stacking refers to providing play opportunities at multiple levels on the same weekend. We generally follow the philosophy of odd or even. So we might stack. If there's a national level 3, we might have a section level 5. We might also have section level 7s running on that same weekend. That's the odd weekends. We also utilize the even weekend, 2, 4, and 6 level events running on the same weekend. That comes in to staggering. Staggering has to do with deadlines. And we stagger our deadlines so that a player, for instance, who does not get into a national level 3, where that deadline is 3 to 4 weeks out of the event, still has time to apply to the level 5 because the level 5 deadline is only 9 days out from the event. So that's stacking and staggering in a nutshell. I also get asked a lot about seasons of play. Is there an indoor season? So we generally have 4 seasons of play, 3 of which are outdoor, March to October. The reason we distinguish and break down the outdoor season is it depends whether or not kids are in school, how we schedule events. Okay, so it's a little different in the summer than it is in the spring and fall when kids are in school. We most definitely have an indoor season. November, December, January, and February. Extremely limited events nationally and sectionally. I've also heard the question about quiet periods. Why are there breaks in the schedule? A couple of reasons. Rest and recovery are absolutely essential to the health and well-being of all young athletes. So throughout the year, there are a couple of weekends where there's limited or no events running at the section level. We typically tie those to holidays or SAT weekends and things like that. It's important to have those breaks. There are also built into the calendar 2 longer breaks during the year when we do not schedule any events in the section. The first one is the first 2 weeks of June. This is a new decision, and it is based on the play patterns and data we've seen and the complexity of the end of school, high school tennis championships, exams, graduation, etc. It just has proven to not be a good time of year to run events, so we're going to take that as one of our breaks. The other one, this one has traditionally been on the calendar for many years, is typically from the 2nd week of December through the Christmas holiday. We don't run events, and then we pick up again in the week between Christmas and New Year's. Talk about the indoor reality. The good news is we are in a much better place in 22 than we were in 21. The bad news, fewer facilities, more expensive. We have an incredibly complex situation of vaccine and mask mandates that vary by facility. So I need to manage some expectations here. There will be very limited events in January and February. If we're able to deliver more, great, but I need everybody to hear from me. We're trying and we're struggling. It also means that the events that we run, in some cases, may not have the draw sizes everybody wants. And in some cases, we may have less than ideal court scheduling. So what do? Junior circuits and some of the opportunities in the play space are actually excellent opportunities for match play experience, and they don't require the same complex court scheduling as our ranked tournaments. So I encourage everybody to think outside the box a little bit and be willing to play some of those circuit events. And yes, they include yellow ball and older age divisions, and we're going to be expanding those opportunities and looking for new providers because frankly, they are just easier to fit into the calendar. And I can assure you, your coach wants you out there playing matches. Whether it's ranked or unranked may not matter as long as you're out there playing matches. So very quickly, there are some changes coming in 2022. Anytime you launch a new program, there's going to be feedback. That feedback has been taken very seriously, and there were a series of task forces formed at the national level. Those task forces include section staff, junior comp committee members, national staff. And we spent many, many hours in meetings evaluating the 2021 unification and were there any adjustments that needed to be made heading into 22. The short answer is yes, and I'm going to go over them really quickly. The important thing to understand is this evaluation and task force process is ongoing, and every year the USTA will embark on this process and continue to make the tournament structure better and better. What you need to know about level 6s and 7s. Level 7 points are going to go up a little bit. Level 6 points are going to go down a little bit. They're going to implement something called champions and finalists points. The reason they're doing that is if you run a compass draw of 8 and you only have 7 players and the player at the top with a bye wins the event, after looking at the data, the points don't work out right in the current system. So this will fix that. Important to know, it's not retroactive. It's just new points moving forward. Nobody is going to lose any points. But when this change goes into effect in early 2022, all the points moving forward in this space will be adjusted. It will not greatly impact what we do at the section level. We will introduce round robin with playoff for a group of 6, which is a good thing. It promotes more matches. Other than that, there's very few changes other than we know we need more of these events. They've been hugely popular. Level 5s. This is an area where the data showed that the opening of section borders saturated the market, and there were actually too many level 5 events. As a result of that, there will be fewer events overall. In our section, we will run approximately 1 or 2 a month. They will be in combination of singles and doubles and mixed or team. And in some cases, they'll be standalone, and in some cases, they'll be combinations. When we can, in June, July, and August, we will expand those events, run 3 days events, including doubles, which we did this year. Important, closed level 5 is new in 2022. We will be able to designate up to 2 closed level 5 events. We're also going to do a slight change to the feed-in consolation. This change to the feed-in consolation is primarily a scheduling issue. The difference between a feed-in to the round of 16 and a feed-in to the quarters has to do with how many rounds of consolation you can squish in on the second day. This decision was made to improve player experience, to offer more consolation rounds without having to wait for other rounds to finish. That same change to the feed-in round of 16 is also happening at the level 4. Just like in the level 5, we're going to have fewer events. We will have 2 closed level 4 events, including singles, doubles, and mixed. We will have a fewer events. There might be an opportunity for you to play across the border in Middle States or Southern. Team events were piloted this year. We weren't able to launch them fully because of the software challenges. The software challenge is being resolved in 2022. So what's going to happen is I'm going to run more team events. We're going to run them at the level 2. We're going to run them at the level 5. We're going to run the closed level 4. We're going to run level 6 and 7 events. So stay tuned. More is coming. We are super excited. I will also tell you that there's a great opportunity in the junior team tennis space where they run weekend events. So you don't even have to be part of a team league. You can grab a bunch of friends and go play. So we encourage everybody to look into team events. Quota lists were paused due to the pandemic and some software challenges in 2021. For those of you vying for national championships, the quota list calculation will be reinstated in 2022. What that means is once a month, starting in January, you will see quota lists in the ranking. Those quota lists will calculate according to the special quota rules. So for example, boys and girls 18s, you can play no more than 3 singles and 3 doubles that will count in your quota from outside the section. So you can play whatever you want, but when they run the quota lists, it's going to be primarily based in section play. And it's a little bit different for the 12s. It's only 2 events, but it's the same concept. Really quickly, before we open it up for questions, I want to touch on the world tennis number. We received that question earlier about universal tennis rating. Coming in 2022, the world tennis number will be integrated into serve tennis and into all of our events. The world tennis number is a rating system, similar but different from UTR. It uses a different algorithm and has different numbers. It is the system that has been adopted by the International Tennis Federation. So USTA, as a subset of ITF, is aligning with that decision and going with the world tennis number. What that means is we will be able to run events using rating as selection criteria, using rating for seeding, and we will begin piloting that as soon as the software updates are there and we can get to all the data. With that, and 9 minutes to go, Kyle, what you got?
Yeah, we'll give people a chance here to submit some questions here. And while we're waiting on that, I've got a few that have come in. But starting off first, and I think this question comes into the section a lot, but the question is, do people get penalized for not playing a backdraw?
So that is a great question. And it is actually in our regulations that a pattern of unsportsmanlike conduct can result in point penalty. Now, am I going to penalize a kid who has genuinely got the stomach flu and has to pull out? Absolutely not. The only time that we're looking to penalize a player for withdrawals is if it's gamesmanship or it's not a real need to pull out. Now, full transparency, that is different if you are double registered in 2 events and withdraw from something, because withdrawing from one event to play another event is a codable offense. So that does come with consequences. Similarly, you need to think about it from a player development perspective. With fewer events, particularly on the level 4 and 5 space, playing those backdraws is even more essential in the player development space than it ever has been. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yep, and then a follow-up to that one that you just mentioned too. If you are signed up for 2 different tournaments and 2 different sections, does that still apply?
Yes, it absolutely does. The rule of concurrent entry is actually a friend at court rule. It is not a Mid-Atlantic rule. It is a friend at court rule. So if a player registers for 2 events in 2 different sections on the same weekend, there are a few exceptions to which you can do that. One of which is if you have written permission in advance of the deadline from both tournament directors. That is hard to get and doesn't happen that often. But if that happens, yes, you can actually be double registered in 2 events. What you can't do, though, is wait to see the draw or wait to see who your first opponent is or what your travel arrangements are and then decide which tournament to play. That is absolutely not allowed. Once you're committed to a draw, you are committed to a draw. Similarly, if you are on the alternate list for one tournament and decide to apply to another tournament, you have to pull yourself off the alternate list for the competing event if you register and appear in the draw for the second event, if they overlap.
All right, sounds like you got to pick then.
Yes, you do. And it has to do with the experience for everybody. Kids play tournaments to play other players. And when kids pull out, people lose that opportunity. It also has to do with the players who maybe didn't get into the draw, who then at the last minute don't have enough time to get there and play the event that they were so desperate to play. So it's a courtesy issue to other players.
Yep, we're all there to play tennis, so I want to get a lot of tennis matches in.
Absolutely.
So Mike asked, the existing UTR rating, is that going to be translated into the world tennis number?
So quite honestly, that is a question for UTR. Currently, the way it works is UTR does scrape our data. So if a USTA event is played, they scrape our data and that data is reflected in UTR. That is not a reciprocal relationship. If you play a UTR event, it doesn't impact USTA at all. So I think how this plays out is something yet to be told as the world tennis number becomes more and more available to more countries.
All right, sounds good. And I'm not seeing any other live questions coming in for the moment, so I'm going to make my questions a little bit harder then.
That's fine. You have 5 minutes. Just so everybody knows, this is a hard and fast stop at 8 o'clock. So if we get cut off, it's because Zoom cut us off.
Fair enough. So Rachel, you mentioned earlier about indoor sites. I know we get a lot of questions in and around that time of year. So with that being said, why are we hosting high-level events in the winter if we're struggling with indoor sites?
So it is a question I get asked a lot. And I mentioned that the scheduling is really, really complicated. The way we schedule is halfway through 2021, I received a national junior schedule. That includes all the national championships, all the level 2s, all the level 3s, all the IPFs. Those events all have critical deadlines. And most of the sections do it this way. We map out a giant calendar, we put down all the nationals and all the deadlines, and then we work backwards to determine our schedule. In the case, for example, of the January level 3, and why do we hold on to that weekend so hard? Couple answers. One, it's a holiday 3-day weekend, so kids are less likely to miss school. So that is an important weekend to run an event from our perspective. Secondly is 99% of the other sections are running their level 3 on that same weekend. And if we bumped ours into March, we might be putting our highest level players in jeopardy in terms of their ability to qualify for some of the upcoming spring nationals. So from the level 3 and 4 perspective, we have to look at it from the national schedule. Then we fill in 5s, 6s, and 7s accordingly. And as I said, we try to saturate the calendar with 6s and 7s as much as we can.
Right, and I think the attendees are letting me do all the hard questions here tonight. So just a couple follow-ups to that one. And sticking with the indoor theme, if we do have to go indoors, how does the section determine which divisions get priority?
So that's another question I get a lot, and it is one I personally struggle with because those decisions are really, really hard for us to make. But I'm going to be fully transparent in how we do it. I prioritize 16s. 16s is because most of those players are in the sweet spot of their playing career in terms of college recruitment. It is also our largest age division. We then prioritize 14s because that is our second largest division in terms of players and growth of the game. Then it goes to 18s, and I'll talk a minute about why 18s doesn't come higher on the list, and then it goes to 12s. And I can guarantee you that I have some 12s parents on the call who are unhappy with that comment, but I'm, again, being fully transparent about how we do this. A 12s player has the longest potential to rise through the sport. So unfortunately, when we have to make tough decisions, it is usually 12s that gets a little bit shortchanged. In terms of the decision between 18s, 16s, and 14s, generally we have found that many of our 18s players are sort of checking out of USTA tournaments in the junior space towards the end of high school. Some of them are playing opens, some of them are playing UTR events, some of them are busy with school. So we tend to see lower numbers in those spaces. So when we have to make tough choices, those are the choices we make. The other thing I will say is, using the example of the 12s, I have a weekend in February coming up, which is a national level 2 weekend. I may not be able to run the level 5 12s that's intended to run that weekend. But the depth of players in the 12s is such that the majority of our players who would be playing the level 5 in our section are likely able to qualify for the level 2. So it's kind of a trade-off. If I offer the event and nothing happens, then we're out of luck. Okay. So tough decisions. I'm afraid we may get cut off here. So I just want to make sure and thank everybody for joining us. We are here to answer your questions. Please reach out. And we look forward to hearing from you. And I hope this was useful.
Thank you, Rachel. And thank you everybody for joining the webinar today. Special thank you to the Mid-Atlantic staff for helping out on the back end. Again, this webinar has been recorded and we'll send you a recap email with the recording and additional resources by the end of the week. So be on the lookout for that. And as always, if you have any further questions, please email youthplay@mas.usta.com. And we look forward to seeing you and your juniors out on the court soon.
Thanks,
you, everyone.
everybody.